Whenever I need an update on the football and the state of play in the A-League, I always go to FNR, Football Nation Radio. And the man from FNR is Athos Sirianos. Welcome.
Hello, George.
Time to talk about some of the conundrum and some of the shenanigans going on this week. Twitter sphere blew apart, wanting to blame just about everybody that was associated with the game. James Johnson, Chris Niku, Greg O'Rourke, about the latest goings on where some of the Melbourne clubs got caught betwixt and between. They needed to be in another part of the country in order to play games, but they were stuck on a tarmac apparently in Melbourne. Give us an update on what's happened and if it indeed was real and legitimate or it was just hot air.
Well, George, as we know, no 2 weeks are ever the same. Last week, you and I were celebrating the landmark decision to award Australia and New Zealand the World Cup, and this week we're left bemused and somewhat entertained by the tumultuous events of the past week. So as things stand, as of Thursday at 2 p.m, we have no official word as to whether the three Victorian clubs have obtained that exemption
all-important exemption.
The New South Wales government. We are still waiting on that. They have said they will make a decision very shortly to get them over there so they can quarantine, they can train, and we can get the season underway.
Okay. James Johnson is talking in a very definite fashion about a move to winter, and he's saying we're not worrying about anybody else. And they've also submitted a number of points that they believe are worth pursuing. What did you make of those?
I thought the actual document and the white paper was quite captivating, and it was what we've needed for quite some time. We've had white papers and documents released before, but they've merely listed the issues, and it's more, they've said things without actually showing us how they're going to do things. This one says the right things, and it also says has the right answers to.
So the aspirational component is built in.
Yes.
And there are some other answers about how we're going to get there, which is even more exciting.
Very exciting.
I was talking to Jack Riley today, and Jack is very, very firmly of the opinion that governments are going to be looking on this very kindly because they see this as a tremendous opportunity. We're talking about the arrival of the FIFA World Cup, the 2023 one, in 3 years' time, as a terrific way to get our economy started in Australia and New Zealand. Do you concur with that thinking?
Absolutely, especially after the coronavirus, and we expect that to have long-lasting impacts economically and financially. A World Cup could be
just the sort of boost, yeah.
Absolutely, and you know, one of the biggest parts and one of the points listed in the 11-point document that FFA released was the legacy that a World Cup and an event like this can lead. Not in addition to football creating its own story and being the masters of its own destiny and having a history library and having its own proper media organisation. So
its own pitch, its own ground.
Exactly. So we are in control of everything. They're not relying on government grants and for grant availability and things like that.
Let's look overseas. The MLS has been knocked over by the COVID pandemic. In fact, it's been extraordinary to see so many of the sports around the world are seriously affected. Major League Baseball only just starting to get itself sorted to begin what will be a very shortened season, but they're going to have one. Let's keep our fingers crossed. What have you made of the latest results coming out of the EPL and out of Serie A? Have they been as expected? La Liga, Barcelona, is it the real Barcelona we're watching, or is it one that pretends to play football?
Well, Barcelona is a very interesting case at the moment. They're 1 point off league leaders Real Madrid, but it doesn't seem like they're quite settled over there.
Is politics getting in the way?
It might be.
Because we know Messi is refusing to sign a contract extension, but I don't think he wants to leave Barca. I just don't think he wants to give the current president any more of a boost.
It does seem like there is an internal conflict between Messi and the president, and there is a lot of fear among Barcelona people and supporters that Messi is getting a bit too big and is having a bit too much influence.
Bit too big, he's only this tall.
Metaphorically speaking, George. They are in need of Real Madrid to drop a few points so then they can climb up the table. They drew the other week, they lost a game. They beat their Catalan neighbours Espanyol, who unfortunately have been relegated now. That sealed their fate for next season, which means that Barcelona will be the only team in Barcelona. Some believe that they are the only team in Barcelona, given their massive size.
Yeah. Look, when you think about that last statement of yours, there's another team in another part of the world, in Manchester, and it thinks it's the only team in town. We're talking about Manchester United, and they've bounced out of the blocks with the restart of the EPL, and they're looking like a seriously different team to the one that began their campaign. Paul Pogba is back, but the arrival of Bruno Fernandes has been like the ultimate plug that you had to put in, you had to find, and they're not available at every Repco store. No. But by golly, the people who ended up with Bruno seem to have found the right code to get Manchester United playing in a manner that's seriously exciting.
Well, he's a real chance for being the signing of the season. We got a glimpse of him pre-COVID and he did a few nice things, and we started to believe that, okay, maybe next season if he continues this form. But since the break, he's been a standout for them. They put 5 goals the other week. They're a real chance of jumping into that top 4, given that
top
Leicester
3 maybe.
And Chelsea are all dropping points, and United are the only Leicester, consistent ones. Their run home is actually quite favourable. They don't play anyone in the top 6. They do have a pretty good fixture, and of course they ended the season against Leicester, which might just be for the top 4, that one.
Now, when do we hear about Manchester City's woes? There's a decision that's meant to be handed down very, very shortly by is it FIFA or is it UEFA who makes the decision about whether they will not be playing in the Champions League next year?
Well, they're currently awaiting, or a decision is pending from the Court of Arbitration.
They've appealed?
So they've appealed the decision to ban them from the Champions League. I think if we hadn't have had this pandemic, we would have known by now, because the season would have ended 2 months ago, so we would have had a decision. But it does mean that 5th place in the Premier League is still up for grabs as being the final Champions League place.
And that there are 3 or 4 clubs. There's Wolves, there's Arsenal, there's Spurs, Sheffield United. They're all there. They're all within a few points of one another. So the next 4 or 5 weeks of the EPL are going to be dynamic in terms of, let's see who the top 5 finish.
We may have had the title decided, but the top 5, the relegation battle, it's 100%. All still to play for.
Now, before we go, very important news. Another Matilda is off to play overseas, and she's decided she's going to join the Arsenal. Jack Riley thought it was the best ground in Britain when we spoke to him, and he's excited for Lydia because it'll give her the polish and the experience that not that she lacked, but it'll sharpen her up for a World Cup. In a couple of years' time.
Well, we know Joe Montemurro now, a former Matildas coach. He is an Australian.
The original winning undefeated coach of Melbourne City when they created their W League side.
Well, it leaves a nice path for Rado Vidičić maybe if he wants to head overseas. But he has signed his 3rd Matilda, so Lydia Williams joins Caitlin Ford and Steph Catley in that team.
That's some trio.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, look, it's exciting news when you add to that Ellie Carpenter in France, when you add Sam Kerr. It's looking like our key players that make up the nucleus of the Matildas are getting the precious experience against some of the best players in the world as we get that run into the World Cup 2023. As usual, Athos Siriano's right on the money. I would have loved to say, give me some tips for the weekend, but there are no games on.
No.
Next week. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, George.